أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وآله وأصحابه وأتابعه وأجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll be back in our class, Al-Maqasid, in our book that we're reading out of. We're on the chapter of wiping one's foot gear, right? Wiping one's foot gear. We went over yesterday the arcans, the obligatory parts of the wudu, which were 6, and we went over the sunnah parts of the wudu, which was 10. So, inshallah, now we will go over wiping foot gear. The author says, wiping one's foot gear, kuf, right? The foot gear is called kus, right? Wiping one's foot gear with wet hands or any other means that wets them, which is a dispensation that can take place of filth, of the filth ablution integral of washing the feet. So this rukin, what we call, this rukin, this arkan of wiping the feet has a dispensation to it, right? That Allah allows the believers, the Muslims, to not have to take off their socks or their kufs. And we will be given a meaning of what socks are later on as we read. But this dispensation, this ruksa, right? This dispensation that Allah gives to bring ease to the believers. So the author goes on and says, is permissible to a non-traveler for 24 hours and to a traveler for 72 hours. So for 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 someone who's a resident that is at home, that is at home, he can wipe over his socks, and that can last for 24 hours. If he's a traveler, he can wipe over his socks or kufs, and that will last 72 hours. So it goes on, it says, the beginning of the period being reckoned from the time of the first minor ritual impurity, hadith, that occurs after having put them on while in a state of ablution. Okay, so this is how it goes. Once a person makes ablution with his by washing his feet, right? Not the kus, right? You make ablution as you regularly would make ablution. You fulfill the arkan, which is washing the feet. Once you put the kuf on, right, you no longer have to wash the feet. For the resident is 24 hours. For the non-residents is 72 hours. You don't have to wash the actual feet, but you can wipe over the kuf, right? You can wipe over the kuf. And then he says, provided that one have a full ablution when one first puts them on, that they be free of filth, of najasa, that they be durable enough to keep walking around upon for a duration of the above mentioned periods, as a travelers do in attending to their needs when encamping and departing. That they cover the whole foot up to and including the ankle bones, provided none of the foot shows. One may not wipe foot gear if wearing just one of a pair, washing the other foot, nor if any of the foot shows through a hole in them, even if the hole is tiny. And they prevent water if dripped on them drop by drop. 3 consecutive drops, or according to the major authorities, prevent water poured on them from directly, promptly. reaching the foot. If water reaches the foot through the holes of a seam stitches, it does not affect the validity of wiping them. Though if water can directly reach the foot through any other place, it violates the condition. The foot gear Muslims generally use for this are ankle-high leather socks that zip up and are worn inside the shoes, which are called kuffs. Though they may be made of anything that fulfills the conditions, including thick, heavy wool socks that prevent water from reaching the foot directly by shedding the first few drops or the first dash of poor water as heavy wool does, but not modern dress socks since they do not meet the conditions of C and E. Okay, so they give us the type of socks that or cuffs that you can use. All right, so let's go back over them again, right? And we'll explain in detail. All right. First, one has to make his wudu, then put the kuffs on. And you can wipe over these kuffs if you're at home in your own city for 24 hours. If you're a traveler, you can do it for 72 hours. Your kuffs must be free of najasa. We went over what is najasa, filth, right? See, they must be durable enough to walk around in them for, if you're a resident, for 24 hours without them tearing, and if you're a traveler, for 72 hours without them tearing. So they must be durable enough to be able to walk around in them outside on the ground without them tearing. This is a very important point. They must cover the entire foot all the way up to the ankles, right? Because Allah Ta'ala tells us to wash our feet up to the ankles. So the kuffs or the socks that you're going to use have to come up to cover the whole feet and up to the ankles. None of the feet can be shown, even if it has little holes in it, right? The next thing, they must prevent water from touching your feet. So if you pour water on the sock, the cuff, the sock must prevent water from touching your feet. If you pour water on it or if you drip water on it and it reaches your feet, the water reaches your feet, you cannot use those as cuffs and you cannot wipe over them, right? You will find a lot of people, right, wiping over these dress socks and these sweat socks that they use, these athletic socks that they use, and even when they wipe over them, their feet is getting wet, right? Even when they wipe over the cuffs, their feet is getting wet with water, right? So that should tell them right there that they can't use those as cuffs. But many people are what we call ignorant of this, this ruling on cuffs. They think they see other people do it, so they think they can do it. They don't ask, if there's a reason why we do this, or what is the ruling on it. So what happens is, because you can't do that, and wudu is a precondition of what? Salat, right? So that makes your salat invalid because you cannot use those type of socks to wipe over. So a lot of us are just lazy. So just take your socks off. If you don't have cuffs, just take your socks off and wash your feet. And khalas, protect your salat, and Allah knows best. And then the fifth one is that the foot gear that is normally used is leather socks. Nowadays, uh, there are things that's called wudu socks, which are socks that are waterproof. I wear them a lot. I got probably 3 pair. I need to get a couple more pair, but they're pretty good. They're waterproof socks. You can get them made where they're thin and they work just like cuffs. And in actuality, I like them better than the cuffs because they're not leather. They're semi like regular socks, especially if you're going to be, in the masjid a lot, and instead of taking your socks off, wasting water, you can just wipe your foot. You know how people want to put their feet in the sink or just throw water on their feet and water is all on the floor. This saves that. This saves this, and it's a sunnah. It's a sunnah that the Prophet always did, right? It's actually a sunnah. So we should look at it and follow the sunnah of the Prophet. That man, I'm gonna get me some kus, and wipe my foot gear. So may Allah Ta'ala help us, in that. But again, not the modern dress socks or the sweat socks that we wear. They they do not meet the qualifications of being able to make Masah, wiping over them. The author goes on to say, it is a sunnah to wipe the foot gear on the top, bottom, and the heels in lines, as if combing something with the fingers without covering every part of them or wiping them more than once. Right? So it's the sunnah just to wipe the top of the foot gear, right? Or the sides. You don't have to really wipe the bottom. Ali radiallahu anh said, if the deen, right, uses the intellect, right, it would say wipe the bottom of the kus because the bottom is where you walk at. That's probably what gets dirty. But laugh, you just wipe the top and the sides, and you just wipe over them. One puts the left hand under the heel and the right hand on top of the foot at the toes, drawing the right hand back towards the shin, while drawing the left along the bottom of the foot in the opposite direction. It is sufficient as wiping the foot gear to wipe any part of their upper surface with wet hands, or to wet them by any other means, from the top of the foot up to the level of the ankle bones. It is not sufficient to only wipe some of the bottom heel side of the foot or some of the foot gear's inner surface that faces the skin. The validity of wiping the foot gear is nullified by taking them off. So once you take the foot gear off, khalas, you cannot put them back on and wipe over them again. You have to make a new wudu by washing your feet, the actual foot. Then you can put the kuf with the socks back on, and you know continue how you was uh, wiping the socks. The permissible period for wiping them expiring. So once you take the kufs off, you cannot wipe them. You cannot wipe over them if you put them back on unless you make wudu. The period, the 24-hour period for the resident, and the 72-hour period for the traveler is over, and or the incurrence of a state of the major ritual impurity, meaning that you've done something that puts you in a major ritual impurity, which causes you have to make ghusl. In that sense, then the validity of wiping over the socks is gone. When some part of the foot shows because of taking them off or through a hole or at the end of their permissible period, one removes the foot gear to perform ablution, wudu, or if one has ablution at the time, to wash the feet before putting them on again and starting a new period of permissibility. If a state of major ritual impurity, janaba, occurs during the permissible period of wiping the foot gear, one must take them off to perform the purificatory bath, which is called the ghusl. Right? So that is the section on wiping over the socks. Now, let's go over the section. Well, we'll stop there because we're at our 15-minute mark, and we'll do the section on Instinja tomorrow. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. May everybody's blessed Ramadan fast be accepted. Alhamdulillah, we just finished the 27th night. And may Allah Ta'ala give those who sought out Laylatul Qadr the benefit of reaching their goal and their intentions, which was Laylatul Qadr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.